Going into this, I guess I'll just talk very, very briefly about what my game plan going into it was. I was going to play him kind of for value and kind of straightforwardly because I thought that Sliikz is pretty suspicious and likes to make a lot of moves. And in my opinion, he might be a little bit too aggressive and floaty post-flop, but who knows? It's a difference of styles. He makes it work for himself. So for the most part, I wanted to play pretty solidly. He doesn't call 3-bets super, super wide, although he does call them reasonably wide, but he does play really aggressively in 3-bet pots in position. He'll float a lot of flops and he'll raise a lot of c-bets, as we'll see. So in general, I want to try and show up with some decent hands against him in 3-bet pots, but I'm not going to only 3-bet strong hands against him because he does fold to 3-bets a decent bit. So I do make some money a lot of the times when he just folds pre-flop, but I'm going to try and not c-bet too liberally in 3-bet pots against him. And that's the game plan. We'll see if it actually works out. And I'm not automatically going to 3-bet hands like ace-jack and stuff like that because although I will 3-bet them a lot of the time against Sliikz, I do want to have some strong hands in my calling range because he really just puts pressure on you. And I think that's the biggest theme of his game is putting pressure on you when you look weak. So I'm going to try and show up with strong hands in spots that I wouldn't normally so that I do have a way of combating his, really he makes a lot of huge overbets when you look weak, and it's really tough because he'll do it a lot with value and he'll do it a lot with bluffs. So I think one of the best ways to defend against that is to show up with some strong hands. And other than that, I didn't really have too much of a game plan, just playing solidly, but we just immediately started four tabling, and I have to admit I was a little bit flustered, so I don't think I was playing that well for the most part. And I think that playing four tables, it's tough. And if you're used to playing four tables or more, and your opponent maybe isn't, then you have a really big advantage against them because it's tough to make adjustments on the fly and make reads and analysis on the fly when you're playing four tables if it's outside of your comfort zone. So there's a really big edge to be gained from just getting used to multi-tabling and then challenging regs to multiple tables when they might not be used to it. So I was min-raising the button against him. I decided to 4-bet early on the bottom left just to see how he would react to it. I'm not going to 4-bet him super wide in general, especially since I think pretty much every time I 4-bet bluffed him in this match, he shoved on me. And I realized that he was 3-betting a lot of pocket pairs, or all his pocket pairs, I'd think, and then automatically shoving them in. So I will 4-bet hands, like pocket sixes, pocket sevens for value, and ace queen and stuff like that. But I'm not going to 4-bet bluff him as often as someone else. On the bottom right, not too much to say. I think actually I prefer check calling the flop on the bottom right, to be honest. My standard would definitely be to check raise, but against Sliikz, this is one of those spots where when I check call, my range looks really weak and he's just going to put a ton of pressure. He's going to value bet really thinly. If he has like pocket fives, I wouldn't be surprised if he bet all the way to the river. He'll overbet bluff a decent bit, and it's good to just see one hand at showdown at the start that I slow played and just get a feel for exactly how he's going to be playing. Or not exactly how he's going to be playing, but get a better idea of how he's going to be playing. When I check raise, I think a lot of the times this hand doesn't get to showdown. But since I check raised, I'm going to keep betting. I think that if I check this turn and call, it looks pretty transparent and it looks pretty strong, I think. And although he does have floats on this board, when he calls my check raise and checking to them would have some value, I think that there's more value to be gained by betting the turn. And against Sliikz, this isn't a turn that looks very bluffy when I bet. So really, this will be a theme of the video, is making plays against Sliikz that I might not make against a more standard opponent. But for instance, on this turn, even though it doesn't look really bluffy, I think this is a spot where Sliikz might decide that since it doesn't look really bluffy, I am going to be bluffing it more often than I should. And he knows that I know that he's floating this board a fair bit, so I wouldn't be surprised if he called me down pretty lightly. Bottom left, I'm going to bet turn and river. He has a lot of ace highs and a lot of threes. And I think that it looks bluffy enough. And I apologize if I miss some hands, because I definitely will. So please ask about them in the comments. Good river on the bottom left. It doesn't look super bluffy, but I've got the best hand almost always, especially since he tends to 3-bet low pocket pairs, which I didn't really know at that time. But regardless, I think he rarely shows up with a better hand.